all-new Yamaha V6 Offshore F350. It's a featherweight knockout, the lightest 350 horsepower outboard on the water, exhilarating boating and incredible control in a powerfully light design. The Yamaha V6 Offshore F350.
Dave Anderson here with the Fisherman magazine. It's June 20th. These are your headlines. The tuna fishing has really started to blossom, both east of the Cape and south of Block Island. Also starting to see a lot more big fluke showing up in catches pretty much across the region. And don't forget, as of Monday, we'll have a temporary closure or a seasonal pause of black sea bass in Connecticut. Stay tuned for all that and more on this week's New England Fishing Forecast.
The Fishing News is sponsored by these fine partners.
Before we begin, we've got a few news items for you guys. The first one is all about that seasonal pause. Now, you may remember that last year, in 2023, NOAA released their findings that pretty much across the region, sea bass were grossly overfished. And they tasked all of the regional states with, with changing the regs to satisfy their new quotas. Everybody seemed to take a different route to satisfying that, and I think Connecticut did the best job because they were able to keep their minimum size the same, and they were able to keep their bag limit about the same. Where in other states, we went up to 16.5 inches, it stayed 16 in Connecticut, and a lot of Rhode Island, Massachusetts, we got bag limits, 2 and 3 fish. In Connecticut, we got 5. So honestly, I think that was the best route, even though we have this 2-week closure, and it does kind of stink that it's, right over the 4th of July weekend, which is one of the biggest boating and fishing weekends of the year. But in my opinion, it's a small price to pay. And I just want to remind you guys that it's going to be, sea bass fishing will be closed as of Monday, the 24th of June, and it will reopen on July 8th. So just don't forget that. You don't want to get caught out there with sea bass, because that could be a problem. Next thing, we're going to check in now with Jenni Ackerman. Here's her latest installment of Open Boat.
Summertime secrets, the secret bait. I know what you did last summer. You caught stripers in the surf using a secret bait, the sand flea. This is a tiny little booger version of the ones that you want to be using, but if you put a little circle hook on this with an egg sinker and throw it out there in the trough, you can get yourself some summertime stripers. Now, you can walk the beaches and find these little guys, just digging in the sand in the wash, and you can get yourself a bounty of sand fleas to fish for stripers. And if you're near a jetty, blackfish, when they're in season, love sand fleas. So you can get yourself a sand flea rake, or just use your hands like I've been doing for the past 24 years. I used to collect them in a bucket when I was little. I should have sold them on the beach. I would have made bank. But get yourself some sand fleas if you want to target some stripers on your next beach day down the shore, and you'll get some. Good luck.
And the last thing, of course, is a giveaway, which is ongoing. We're seeing a lot of photos coming in right now. This has been a really good one so far. We're going to be giving away a sort of like a bright chartreuse apple green over white flat glide made by yours truly. And we're going to give that away on July 26th. So we still got a little over a month until that's, so we're going to hand that thing over to somebody. So you got plenty of time. And you guys know the drill by now. It's pretty simple. It's just you gotta send in a picture of you holding your fish. It can't be like laying on the ground or something like that. It doesn't matter if it's caught from a boat, paddleboard, kayak, surf, whatever. Freshwater, saltwater, doesn't matter. If it was caught locally or was caught on vacation, none of that matters. You just gotta send it in to me at danderson@thefisherman.com or text it to the number on the screen. And just make sure you give me all the details, like your name, roughly where it was caught, how big the fish was, what you caught it on, stuff like that. We'll get you in the report most likely, and definitely get you in the magazine. And who knows, you might be the guy who wins. Jumping over to the reports now, this is the first week since stripers showed up in southern Maine that things have been on the slower side, or things have slowed down a little bit. Hardcore guys are still finding them, but overall the bite's just been a little bit slower. by no means is it off, it's just a little slower. We are coming right into the full moon right now, which may fire things back up. In fact, I would guess that it will. But just a little bit slower in Maine, and then dripping down into New Hampshire as well. And I think you're going to find when we talk to James, they're seeing the same thing up on the North Shore of Massachusetts. Here he is.
Just finished up a session on Plum Island. It wasn't good. Not even a touch. Man, did I walk up quite a ways. Oh, I'll tell you. Still better than sleeping. Okay, I don't know about that, but all I can say is these bugs in the sunrise are just driving me nuts. Anyways, the report for the week is not much going on. Commercial guys started up yesterday, and I heard it was pretty slow up this way. Not sure how anybody else is doing. But the guys that are grinding are finding something. I had 5 or 6 fish the other night. My buddy Sam had 7 fish Tuesday night. I don't know, the days are running together now. A couple other buddies, they had some fish. Another guy I know had 1 fish, but that was 32 pounds. So that was a good fish. One of the club members, a guy I know, James Ferguson, he was out last weekend and found himself a nice bluefin a couple miles out of the Merrimack mouth. So he had some pretty good eating for a wreck fish. I think he said it was 55 inches or something like that. Didn't hear much from the freshwater guys this week. I'm sure they're doing something up there, but there ain't much going on. The fishery is in trouble. We all know that. Don't have to berate that point to death. Take care of your fish. If you're out walking the beach and you get a swell going on, just be careful. Find some deeper structure. You'll probably be better off finding some fish that way. But anyways, not a whole hell of a lot going on. Enjoy yourselves out there. Sorry, I'm a little distracted this morning. I don't know why. Could be I'm pretty tired. Anyways, 4th of July weekend's coming up soon. Everybody be safe then. Till next week, I'll talk to you later, Dave.
Take a couple steps inland from here, and I didn't hear anything from Quabbin or Wachusett this week, but just from growing up in Central Mass like I did, I lived there for 22 years of my life in Westboro. And this is a great time of year in Central Mass and any interior New England state for that matter to go out and throw frogs around for largemouth bass. And with it being the full moon, it's one of my favorite times to go out and do it at night. So you've got lots of opportunity to go out and get a nice largemouth bass. You might get a really big one at this time of the year as well. And a frog is such a fun way to do it. You can also do it with a whopper plopper. But this is a great time for largemouth bass fishing, so I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that before we head back to the coast. Striper fishing in and around Boston Harbor has still been very good. We're seeing some more consistent results on some bigger fish. Starting to see more, 35 to 40 pound fish being caught with greater regularity. There's pretty good numbers of bunker schools around that area, or pogies if you're from Mass and you prefer to call them that. That's fueling these bites. And whether you're doing it from the surf, guys are getting it done with metal lips, or you're doing it from the boat, where guys are doing it with the dock, guys are doing it with flutter spoons, and guys are doing it by drifting around with live bunker as well. There's a lot of striped bass to be had along that region right now. Heading down toward the canal and then jumping over, still the main attraction on the Cape for saltwater fishermen is striped bass. And the bite has been, or the results have kind of been all over the place with regard to size and just consistency. Along the bay shorelines, there's been some bigger fish for the surf guys fishing that area, but the consistency has not been there. Boaters are doing a little bit better, fishing around Barnstable Harbor, fishing up around Race Point, fishing out on Billingsgate. There's been, more consistent striped bass results there. Going around the tip of the Cape, along the beaches, we're starting to hear more and more surf reports from the outer beaches, from Race Point all the way down to Nauset, but there's been no consistent, like, this is the spot you got to go. They're always at this beach or at this tide or whatever. It's been much more scattered. Seems to be a decent amount of bait around, and I think this is just the beginning of these fish settling in for the summer. And hopefully we're going to see another season where we have some pretty good and consistent fishing from the sand out in the outer Cape. So we're definitely going to want to keep an eye on that. Talking to the guys at the Goose, we definitely have seen an uptick in tuna activity east of the Cape. And that's been all the way from the Sword to Crab Ledge and all the way up to Stellwagen. Seems like it's been a lot more smaller fish. So a lot of the bigger fish, a lot of the giants that have been coming in have been sort of solo, it seems like, or they've been much more scattered. But good numbers of wreck-sized fish, up to 50 inches, 50 plus inches in that range. Most of these fish are being caught trolling bars, but we are seeing some guys doing it on, things like big paddle tails on a lead head, stuff like that. And a few guys have been doing it stand up on the spin rod, just throwing the Ronzi around. But by and large, guys are doing it trolling bars right now. Coming around the end of the Cape, more toward Monomoy, striped bass fishing has been very good in that region, and heading out toward Nantucket from there. All those rips seem to have fish right now, and not much has changed since last week. A lot of slot-sized fish, a lot of just over slots, and it's kind of topping out right around like 41 inches. So I haven't heard of any really big fish in that area, but good numbers of fish in there regardless. Also, sea bass fishing has really started to kick into gear from Nantucket Sound all the way down through the Elizabeths. So that's something you can definitely do right now. Punching through the islands, all on the islands, we've had decent striped bass activity. Hasn't been stellar, but they're in and around the Elizabeths. Guys are finding some fish in that area. And then moving up toward the canal, still on the slower side. It's ticked up a little bit. Water temps are pretty warm in that region, which may be a factor, but just not seeing the migrations of striped bass that we usually see in mid-June moving up toward the canal. Hard to say why that is. I remember last year we had a push at the beginning of July, so maybe we're going to see the same thing this year. But right now, in that region, striped bass fishing is still on the slower side. And then moving up into the canal, kind of the same story. There's been a few small bluefish around, and there's been some striped bass activity, but mostly for the hardcore guys that are going there no matter what. For a little bit more on that, let's check in now with East End Eddie.
Hi, Dave. We got the tail end of an east flood tide here this morning on the Cape Cod Canal. So hopefully this heat wave brings in some fish from Buzzards Bay. Not that that's the normal progression, but I'll be happy for any kind of change that might make things happen the way things are now. It just hasn't been fun lately. There's been some bluefish in the west end biting off paddle tails just below the hook naturally. But striped bass, they've been harder to find than a Jewish deli in Dublin. With few exceptions, certain canal rats have hooked up, like legendary surf caster Bull McKinnon. He got into a 3-day surface bite with using his Wally's 4-ounce pencil, Green Mac pencil, and Bull caught quite a few fish. He caught 34 fish in 3 days, and the biggest one was 22 pounds. So I was happy for him. He's one of the best guys in the canal. Good for Bull. And Vinny and Vito Massico come from Long Island, but they come here enough to be qualified as canal rats. And those guys had a good day, a good morning. They had some fish between them, and Vinny was throwing a bone-colored Uzuri twitch bait, and his biggest fish was 19 pounds. And his son Vito took top hook with a 28-pounder that he fooled with a happy as a clam squid something, squeaky squid, slippery squid. He used a slippery squid and got a 28-pounder, so that was good. But other than that, there hasn't been much going on. Just a reminder to you tog hunters, the bag limit for tautog dropped down to 1 on June 1st, effective June 1st. So it's been in effect for a few weeks now. So you can only have take one tautog per person. And so my tip of the week is just to tell you that I wear knee pads because they've helped me in the past in a few different ways. But you know, the canal can be treacherous. Those riprap stone banks can be tough, especially if you fall on them. And I've done that a few times. One time a few years ago, I wiped out my left knee for 6 months. So I started wearing knee pads. They're the kind roofers wear. In the interest of full disclosure, I'm the only one in the canal I've ever seen wearing knee pads, but I've seen plenty of guys that wish they were wearing knee pads because they fall on it and it can do some damage to your knees. So until next time, catch a big one.
And then heading out into western Buzzards Bay, fluke action's been pretty good, especially out in the western part, out around the Elizabeths or heading out toward Nomans. Guys are finding, you know, decent numbers of fluke. It's not like, you know, a Donnybrook, tons and tons of fish or anything like that, but the guys that are putting in the time, the guys that know the hot zones within that region are finding some decent sized fish, and they are finding limits as well. And that's what I have for you guys in Massachusetts this week. Jumping across the border now into Rhode Island, we'll start things off with an East Bay report from TJ Kopecky.
Thanks, Dave. Hey guys, quick video on what's going on here in the East Bay and a little bit of southeastern Massachusetts. We're gonna keep it in Mass real quick and start in the Coles River. Coles River's been good. Lots of small bass, and I've been finding that throughout the 3 rivers up here in southeastern Mass, the Taunton River, the Lees River, and the Coles River, and even moving towards the Kickmule River. Been a lot of small bass around. Bass to 25 inches, still feeding on some small bait. Really haven't figured out what the bait is. I haven't seen many pogies up inside the rivers. The bait that was up in the Taunton River, up near the Brightman Street Bridge, has now disappeared, probably out into the middle of the bay, Mount Hope Bay that is, and I haven't seen anybody in there snagging bait in the morning, or you know, I haven't even seen the bait boat. So, which leads to believe me that that bait has moved on, and probably so the fish along with it. So, I've heard of good ground fishing moving up into Mount Hope Bay towards the Mount Hope Bridge. There's been a really good scup bite, and a couple of weak fish been caught underneath the Mount Hope Bridge in that deeper water. So squid, clam tongue, crab if you have it, all been working. For those scup if you got them. Fish bite has been working too. I'll use that when you don't want to keep changing the bait a lot. Stays on the hook pretty well. Moving into Bristol Harbor, there's some schoolies way up inside, up almost in the backside of Colt State Park. And moving around into the front, there's definitely bass all along the shore of Colt State Park and up into the Warren and Barrington rivers. Barrington River's been actually the best for me lately. Fishing from Matheson Road, outgoing tide has been great. I did catch a keeper on Saturday inside of the Barrington River, along with a ton of small diaper stripers, and everything was caught on a 3-inch Z-Man diesel minnow. That's what's been working for me. I did have an outing in Buzzards Bay on Father's Day, and I hope everybody had a great Father's Day, by the way. We fished Wilkes Ledge, which is right off of Dartmouth, between Dartmouth and Cuttyhunk. And I got to tell you, it was a lights out. Almost every single drop, we came up with a fish. And if we didn't catch a fish, we lost our gulp. So we were pretty much fishing high-low rigs, gulp on the bottom, just a little curly tail on the top. And I tell you, it was scup, fluke, sea robins, nice big sea bass, some healthy ones that we got, and my daughter had a great time, and she caught probably her personal best sea bass for her. So congrats to her also. So moving forward out in the bay, I just think that fish are getting into their summer patterns right now. And I believe eels are going to be the ticket right now, since there's no forage fish for them to feed on inside the bay. Try fishing underneath the Mount Hope Bridge and those deep ledges that come up from 75 to 30. Just drop an eel down there and see what you can do. That's probably going to be a best bet. Going forward, tight lines, guys, and we'll catch you next week.
Now, the thing that I'm hearing striped bass-wise in the eastern half of Rhode Island is that surf guys have been struggling pretty hard, and the boat guys are doing pretty well as long as they can get out there. It's been really windy, really rough. It's kept a lot of guys off the water. But out in front of Newport, out in front of Jamestown, and then heading over toward Narragansett, there's a lot of sizable striped bass. Fish from 40 inches to over 40 pounds. A lot of these fish are being taken on live eels, but it's being done a whole bunch of different ways. One thing that's been working especially well is soft plastic eels. You know, big soft plastic eels are like a big paddle tail, like the no live bait needed 8-inch ones. They're all getting it done out there. And in the daytime, guys are doing it with the dock and the flutter spoon as well. But a lot of these fish are quite large. They're schooled up, and when the boats get on them, they're really tuning them up good. So if that's something that you want to get in on, I would just hop in the boat, start start motoring around, from Newport over to Jamestown, and then heading over toward Narragansett. You're probably going to find a pile of fish somewhere in there, and odds are they're going to be pretty big. Still some good-sized fish up in the bay too, even up north of the Brightman Street Bridge. There's been some fish up that way. Still some fish up toward Providence as well, and we're seeing more and more bluefish moving into that region also. A little bit more on some of the things happening inside the bay and outside the bay as well. Let's check in now with Jeff Sullivan. Here he is.
Hey Dave, what's going on, guys? So this week I'm going to show you guys a little secret about what I do with my GT eels and how I rig them. I'm sure you guys may have stumbled across how to do it your way. There's tons and tons of ways to rig up an eel, a gravity tackle eel, a sluggo, a hoagie eel, what name you. There's so many jig heads. There's so many ways to do things, double rigs, like Steve McKenna does. There's a whole bunch of ways to rig up an eel, but this is the way I found over the winter time. I was sitting here and I was playing around with, tackle. And I found this way being very effective. I put it to use this year, and I'm getting 6 or 7 extra more fish on it because it's more durable. And I found it's very effective. So let's just dive right into it. So these are gravity tackle jig heads. I'm sure you guys have seen them at your tackle shop. They're literally right next to the soft plastics. You can't miss them. They actually have a spring lock on them. And I cut that spring lock off, and I'll show you why in a second. But before I get into that, the spring lock usually sits at the top and you just screw it in like so, right? And you just bury the hook in the slot and it comes out the side. But there's the problem. You can see through it. And I don't like that gap. This gap, you get it in the structure, you get a couple fish on it, rips that off the hook, and then it rips the spring lock off and you're out of an eel and you got to replace another one, which is not a problem, but I just feel like it's more of a nuisance than anything. So what I like to do is I cut the spring lock off. You can do this on the 9-inch eels too as well. And I'll take the smallest jig head they offer because I found that's the better fit. It's a really small diameter. It fits right in the soft plastic eel, no problem. So I'll take the top of this and I'll mark it to where I want to go. Probably a 1/4 inch from the top. So I'll poke my hole right there, right? And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert that hook. But I want to make sure it's straight. I don't want to have it leaning more on this side or this side. I don't want to poke it out each way. I want to make sure it's nice and straight. So what I'm going to do is make sure it's nice and straight. I'm going to keep going down. I'm going to thread it down to about the L and the E on gravity tackle. So between those two letters, I'm going to pop it out like so. So I'm going to thread it all the way down. And then it's okay. If you're a little crooked at first, just back it down a little bit and fix it. It's not a big deal. It's not the end of the world. So I'm going to thread it down here between the E and L. And I'm going to pop it out like so. And now I'm going to slide this up. Now I'm going to take my palm of my hand and I'm going to push down. On this eel. Like so. I'm just going to keep working it. There's no rushing in this. Just take your time. So I'm going to just keep working it up. Right? And now, my friends, you have a gravity tackle eel. Now the weight's hidden inside. You don't have to worry about any of that space. You can tie direct here, use a clip, whatever you want to do. Now you have a nice presentation for the back base and the big water. You can fish boulder fields, ledges, jetties, you know, whitewash, whatever you want to use. And that's it. And it literally takes seconds. It takes just as long to do that than you would with the screw lock hook, in my opinion. If you do a few of these, it's like tying your shoes. So yeah, I mean, you can do it with weight. You can do it unweighted and stick some nail weights in there, you know, because this doesn't have a slot, so you can get away with not having a screw, the screw locks down here. But yeah, I mean, that's what I've been using. That's my little secret. Also, you can zip tie these the back there, so it keeps it even more sturdier and more durable. I mean, that's just what I do with my GTOs, guys. So it's been very effective for me this year. It crushes fish. They've been crushing fish since they came out. All right, same time next week. Thanks.
Heading out toward Block Island, fluking has been not so great around Block itself. Starting to see more striped bass moving into that area, starting to see more and bigger bluefish moving into that area. But a lot of the guys that are passing Block are just keeping on going because the tuna bite has really started to fire up over the last 7 days. I've heard of fish out by the Ranger. We've heard of fish at Butterfish Hole. We've heard of fish out at Tuna Ridge. So south of Block, south of Montauk, within 20 miles for the most part, there has been tuna action, and most of the hotspots that everybody knows seem to have fish right now, which is pretty cool. Also had one report from one gentleman who took a really long ride out to one of the offshore canyons and got his first bigeye of the year, which is pretty cool as well. Moving back toward the shore, the best fluking is still along the South County beaches. And for a little bit more on that and some of the other things happening in that region, let's check in now with Captain John Lee from JL Charters.
Hey, John Lee, Point Judith, Rhode Island. Fishing this week's been decent. I've had some very good bass trips, getting slot fish. I'm getting fish up to 40 pounds, quite a few schoolies as well. Those bass are on a bunch of different kinds of bait. I saw them on pogies today. They're on butterfish and sand eels. So there's a lot going on as far as bait around the island. I have not run into any slammer blues yet. I mean, a few like 8-pounders, but I'm still waiting for those real gators to show up. Maybe they have, I just haven't heard about it, haven't seen it. The bottom fishing for me has been a bit of a grind. That's going to be, I'm just really hoping that the big sea bass are going to start to slide in. Again, I'm fishing a pretty narrow band of water. Maybe you guys are doing great, but where I'm fishing, it's just not on yet. Also, fluke is hit or miss. Sometimes you catch a few, sometimes you don't get any. So again, hopefully that starts to turn on. Last year and the year before, fluking actually got pretty good in July, August, and September. So maybe it's going to be a repeat of that, and we have a June that's not like previous Junes. So it's just kind of an off month. Anyway, I'll get up with you later. Have a good one.
Striped bass guys are still finding fish along the South County beaches and along the breachways as well. Boaters are getting bigger fish on the average, doing a lot more damage like around the Watch Hill Reefs and heading out behind fishers. A lot of nice fish in that region. And as we already mentioned, the fluking's been really good along that stretch, and guys are finding some sea bass in some of those deeper, rockier spots as well. Overall, fishing in Rhode Island has been pretty good, and that's what I've got for you guys in the Ocean State this week. Crossing over into Connecticut now, main things that are going on in Connecticut are that the striper bite is still very good in the race, still very good out behind fishers, and we're still not seeing the movement of bunker that we typically expect to see by now, especially around the Connecticut River, which has affected the striped bass bite in that area. But there are other bait species moving in. We've got a lot of butterfish. We've got a decent push of mackerel in the area, which is somewhat unusual for this time of the year. So striped bass fishing has been putting along. It just hasn't been as good as it typically is, especially for size, because we're not seeing the bunker that we usually see in the Eastern Sound. Best place to go if you want to try to find a bigger fish has definitely been the race. Guys are doing the biggest fish on 3-weight bucktails and 3-weight eels. but lots of different methods are working. Guys are doing extremely well on diamond jigs. Guys are doing well trolling, and even some top water action when the tide slows down or if you get out there first or last light. Moving back up toward the Connecticut River, let's check in now with Captain Mike Roy from Real Cast Charters.
Hey, what's up everybody? For this week's fishing report, striped bass fishing is good. The fish are still feeding on a variety of bait fish on the deeper reefs. There's been some days when they've even come up to the surface and they've been busting bait on the surface. And if you see that, you're going to be able to cast surface lures and catch them, which is a lot of fun. Most days they're going to be staying down to the bottom. You got to get down to where the fish are. They're not going to come up and chase something up top. There's some adult bunker around as well. So if you're able to catch bunker, that's going to be your best bet for catching the largest stripers that are here. Black sea bass fishing is still going pretty good. Those fish are spawning in the Central Sound. Good luck this week.
Now let's head up the river and check in quick with Rowan Lytle.
Hello everybody. So very sweltering week here in Connecticut, obviously, and that is certainly going to impact the fishing in the Connecticut River. The river's pretty good and low right now. Water clarity in the main stem is not bad at all. Certainly better level and clarity than we saw most of the entire season last year. So now we got kind of classic summertime conditions for the river. That of course means early mornings and evenings are going to be your best bets for good activity, especially when it comes to largemouth bass, smallmouth bass. Channel catfish chunking can be pretty darn good at night. Carp fishing also going to be best probably in the morning. Carp are not as much of a warm water liking fish as a lot of people tend to think they are. They actually like it fairly cool. So if you're focusing on big carp in the river right now, making sure you're out for those nighttime shifts and early morning shifts, and baiting your swims a few days in advance and getting out there for those either after dark or early morning hours is probably your best bet at good activity. As far as anything else goes, it's getting too hot for pike. If you're going to try and catch pike this time of year, make sure you're not doing so right at the mouths of smaller streams. If you find schools of pike stacked up in little creek mouths, those fish are seeking thermal refuge, so best to look at larger river mouths or areas where they're not really stressed out and looking for cold water. Otherwise, as far as the trout fishing goes, a lot of the tributaries also getting too hot. The Salmon River going to be getting a little too warm for safe targeting of trout. So unless you're planning to eat everything you catch, don't be trout fishing in a lot of those tributaries right now. But those early morning and evening windows should be very good, should provide some good topwater bass fishing and things like that. And it is nice to see the river at a more typical water level and temperature for this time of year.
And now heading out of the river, we'll check in Westbrook with Matt Stone from Black Hall Outfitters.
Things are definitely getting pretty solid out there all around. We've had some good reports of bunker getting a little closer to us here in the Central Sound, which we always love. That's recently in the last few days. So stripers are pretty consistent. You're having a steady pick on the reefs, and the inshore points and things like that are also getting much better. We expect the full moon here at the end of June to also have hopefully a positive impact on those fish as well. As far as sea bass, 70 feet plus kind of remains the dominant depth right now. All the normal things, slow pitch jigs are my favorite way to go for them, but you can also use rigs with squid, things like that, all your normal stuff for sea bass. Fluke, we've gotten really, really good fluke reports at the shop. A guy came in today, one of our regulars, and said he's never had a better day of fluking than he did earlier today. And that's been consistent, not necessarily the best day ever, but guys doing well, getting limits, getting a lot of shorts. Anytime there's a bunch of fluke coming over the rails, everyone's happy. So that's pretty awesome to hear as well. We hope that continues for sure. Porgy's heating up as well. Those are going to get better and move in shallower as the water heats up. We've got a stretch of warm weather ahead of us here, so I think that'll also impact the porgy fishing. Blues are still scattered, not necessarily heavy in one place or the other, but you'll get them as bycatch here and there, and everyone knows how angry they are, so you might get them when you don't want them. I hope everyone enjoys the week. Get out there, and good luck.
Bottom fishing is really coming into its own in the western half of the Central Sound. Sea bass fishing has been really good. Don't forget, we are going to see that pause on Monday, so we're going to have a 2-week closure, but up until the end of this weekend, the sea bass fishing should be very good in that region, out on those reefs, out on those rock piles. Scup has or porgies, as you guys call them in Connecticut, have really started to pile into all these places. The scup fishing has been very good, and the shore guys are now getting in on that as well. There's a good mix of striped bass and bluefish in the area, and as we get out more toward New Haven and Milford, we're starting to see that summer pattern that we see every year where big striped bass start to move out to that 50 line. So that 50-foot depth contour line off of Milford, off of New Haven, always seems to produce some really big striped bass at this time of the year. You got a good chance of going 30 to 50 pounds, throwing chunks, throwing eels, and especially at night. That's something that you can rely on year in and year out, and here it is happening again. For a little bit more on the things happening out in the Western Sound, let's check in now with Max Finch from Fisherman's World.
Hey everyone, Max here from Fisherman's World with another local fishing report. This past week we've seen some nice striped bass taken leading up to this full moon this coming week. The bite still remains really good. A lot of fish are still holding on our deep water reefs like 28C, 11B, the OB buoy. Closer up in the islands with the bunkers still, flooding inshore, bringing some fish. I've seen some nice fish on the fly rod early morning, around the islands. And then guys on spin casting spooks, paddle tail shallow around our shallow water boulder fields, grassy edges. I've heard a lot of action near Sheffield, Green's Ledge, Kakini Shoals. So bass fishing still remains red hot, and there's still some bluefish still moving inshore. A lot of them still remain in our deep water reefs. Guys are getting them diamond jigging, trolling a wire with umbrella rigs, deep divers. And then on the outgoing tide, 11B and 28C still remains the best bet for the outgoing. And then moving on to fluke, the fluke bite this past week was actually pretty good. Guys shooting across or finding limits. And then on our side, it's filling in more and more each day. It seems like bait is still the way to go right now. Squid, spearing, smelt, and sand eels. We're fully stocked up with all your fluke baits. But trying places like Can 24, Can 26, and then the beaches offshore Rhode Island remain good. You gotta, you're getting a lot of shorts, but you gotta pound these areas to find your limits. And then across Smithtown Bay, Eaton's Neck, Huntington Harbor, Port Jeff. The sea bass bite remains good, but it's on our deep water wrecks and reefs. So I would say 55, 60 foot or more. If you get on top of a wreck or like the Celtic wreck, 28C, the deeper parts of there, guys drifting high-low rigs or, anchored up with clam chun, dropping down jigs, clams, squid. Remains really good. Porgies are flooding in more and more each day too. Guys are starting to get them from the beaches like Norwalk Pier and Rhode Island. And then our shallow water, reefs and boulders are holding them. But it seems like the more the quality fish are coming from like that 30 to 50 mark on top of wrecks or reefs. And then moving on to freshwater, the trout fishing remains good still. But early morning, sunset seem to be the best with this heat, during the day that's a little slower. And then the Saugatuck Reservoir still has some nice smallies being caught. I've seen a couple trout, guys, they really are dedicated to get these big trout that do live in there. But early mornings and dusk going to be your best bet. Thanks and good luck.
And that's what I have for you guys this week. Hopefully it's going to inspire you to get out there. We got the full moon this weekend. We got good canal tides this weekend. And just lots of opportunity. I think with a lot of this moving tide, or stronger tides coming up this weekend and into early next week, we're going to see an uptick in a lot of different fisheries. And if we can just get rid of this wind for a couple days, I think we're going to see some awesome offshore catches as well. If you're not a subscriber to The Fisherman, I highly recommend you head over to our website. That's thefisherman.com. You get a full taste of what we offer over there for free. We cover all the fishing from Delaware up to Maine. We cover every possible angling discipline that you can think of, from inshore, offshore, surf, kayak, paddleboard, freshwater, saltwater. It doesn't matter. We do it all. We cover it all. And it's cost you $30 for the year. That's $29.95. You're going to get 12 paper issues sent to your house. You're going to get 26 digital editions sent to your email, and you're going to get digital access to all of our back issues going back several years and all of our other editions. So if you sign up for New England, which is the one that I run, you're going to get digital access to New Jersey and Long Island as well. It's the best $30 you can spend in fishing. There's no doubt about that. But if you go to the website and you're still not interested, at the very least, give us a like and subscribe here on YouTube and hit that little bell thing right there so you get a notification every time we post something new. I appreciate you guys for watching, and we'll see you next week.